Let's finish up this review with multicolored lands and artifacts. So we're starting off with Braga, King Eternal. 2 white blue, 2/4 flyer. So already it's a solid card. It's a 2/4 flyer for 4. It's usually playable in most limited formats, I would say. Also it has the ability that when it deals combat damage to the player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your owner's control. So you get to blink anything, including itself. So if you deal damage with Braga, it has vigilance in a sense. Also you get to reuse all the enter the battlefield triggers. All your Tears Face was going to gain you 4 life. Manowar is going to get to bounce a creature again. And there are probably some more spicy stuff you can do too. You can reset Parallax Wave. So blue-white is not my favorite color combination, but Braga is definitely a reason to go into that color. So if you're solid blue-white, I think Braga is an 8. It's going to do something great almost every game. I don't know if I would splash for Braga. It depends. If I'm a blue-red deck with a bunch with Flame Tanker and Middleback Chiefs, I think I'm going to splash Braga. Then it's a 7. And then we have another white-blue card. They are sorted by the color combinations here, which is very neat. Reviving Vapors. 2 white-blue. Reveal top 3 cards of your library and put one of them into your hand. You gain life equal to that card's mana cost. Put all other cards revealed 2 ways into your graveyard. This is an anticipate with a little bit of life can tacked onto it. I'm not in love with this card. Usually the curves in this format are pretty low because it's a somewhat aggressive format. And anticipate with some life gain on, I don't think it's worth 4 mana. So I'm gonna give Reviving Vapors a 4. And it's not unplayable, but I'm not too excited about it. Alright, let's move on to the white-black cards. We have Deathgrasp, which is X white-black. Deals X damage to target creature player, you gain X life. So it's a fireball that also gains you life. Sort of a drain life in a sense. But you only have to pay the white and a black, unlike Drain Life where you have to pay only black mana. Yeah, this is a rock solid card. The fact that it's a fireball is always spicy, because sometimes when you flood out or the game goes long, you can kill your opponent. And you can gain life also. It's not super efficient at any point in the curve, but I mean if you spend 5 mana, it's like a Dark Nourishment. But you also have the option to cast it for 2 or 1 or 4. And it also is in a reasonable color combination. I mean, white-black is a nice controlled color. I'm gonna give Deathgrasp a 6. And I would not splash for it, I don't think. Alright, moving on, we have Magister of Worth. 4 white-black, 4/4 flyer. So it's already okay. When it comes into play, you have to vote for Grace on Condemnation. If Grace gets more votes, each player returns each creature card from his graveyard to the battlefield. The Condemnation gets more votes, or the vote is tied, destroy all creatures, other than Magister of Worth. So you should always choose Condemnation to not give your opponent a choice. Because if you choose Grace, you're only giving your opponent an option to choose to return all creatures. If they want to, they can just make you blow up the board. So always choose Condemnation. This is a 4/4 flyer that wraths all other creatures. That's very good. Not to mention the fact that if you blink this card some way, you get to reuse the ability. There's also white-black has some reanimate components. I'm gonna give Magister of Worth a 9. I think it's a very good card. And it stabilizes the board. When you spend 6 mana in this format, you really want to affect the board, and of course this card does that. So great card and a reason to be white-black. Moving on to Baleful Strix. Blue-black, 1/1 Flying Death Touch. When it comes to the play, draw card. This card is great. This does almost everything you do. It's almost a guaranteed 2/1 because you can block almost any creature in the format. Yeah, okay, it's not great against Battle Screech, but you can block something else, hopefully. Then we get Baleful Strix an 8, and I will also play it in Storm because it buys you time and digs you deeper. Block something good. So it's even playable in Storm. Psychotog. 1 blue-black. Discard a card, it gets +1/+1, and exile to cross from your graveyard, it gets +1/+1. It starts as a 1/2. So the 2 abilities synergy with each other. If you discard a card, you're halfway to the second ability to exile 2 cards. So whenever you discard a card, you're actually giving it +1 +1.5 +1.5. Also, it's a good madness outlet. Blue has a bunch of madness cards. And it's great in Reanimator. So most blue-black decks wants this except for Storm. And sometimes you can get an upheaval and try to draft some combo deck. That's kind of hard, though it's not necessary. I'm going to give Psychotog an 8. It's a great card in the blue-black color combination. Next is Dak Faden, 1 blue-red, loyalty-free planeswalker. +1, your target player draws 2 cards and discards 2 cards. So you can target your opponent if you want to mill them, preferably when they have no cards in hand. -2 can control target artifact. That's not something that you're going to do too often. And then -6, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell that targets one or more permanents, you can control those permanents. That emblem will be much more spicy if it was spell or ability, but it's only spell. So most of the time when you cast a spell on one of your opponent's permanents, it's going to destroy it or bounce it, and then it doesn't matter if you gain control of it. Because if you bounce something, it's still going to get bounced. So mostly you want to cast Duck for its +1 ability to loot 2. That's pretty good. There isn't too many artifacts in this set. I'm going to give Dak Faden a 5. That seems low, maybe, but I don't think Dak Faden is that impressive. And it's just it's a looter that your opponent may be able to kill sometimes. If they can't kill it, they can probably just ignore it. So a harder to cast looter that is also fragile. Then we have Dax Duplicate, 2 blue-red for a 0/0, and you can have it enter the battlefield as any creature on the battlefield except against haste and dethrone. So it's a clone that has haste, and sometimes you can grow it. You're probably not going to be able to grow it too many times, because if you hit with this card, it's usually going to deal so much damage that your opponent's not going to be the person with the highest life total anymore. But a clone with haste is a nice card, and it's an extra spicy ability. I'm going to give that Duplicate a 7. Clone is usually a good card, and haste makes it even better. Now we actually have a third blue-red card, and this is also a spicy one. Prophetic Bolt, 3 blue-red. Deals 4 damage to target creature or player. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put one of those cards in your hand, the rest on your bottom. So it's a 2-for-1, and it also destroys usually almost any creature on the battlefield, and you get a good, nice impulse. So both the cards you get for this one are excellent cards, and they're not even that overcosted. So it's a very neat package. I'm going to give Prophetic Bolt an 8, and it is the biggest reason to draft blue-red. If you're blue-red, you can draft a bunch of these and maybe Scrivener, and then you're going to have a very nice control. So this is the reason to be blue-red. Blazing Spectre, 2 black-red, 2/2 flying haste, and this combat temperature play that play discards a card. Yeah, this card is also very efficient. The ability is not exactly what the black-red deck wants because it's somewhat aggressive, but you take it. And I'm giving Blazing Spectre an 8. And if your opponent's not having flyers, this is going to just empty their hand very fast. Grenzo Dungeon Warden, X black-red for a 2/2. And that's the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. You can pay 2 to put the bottom card of your library into your graveyard. And if it's a creature card with power less than or equal to Grenzo's power, put it onto the battlefield. Yeah, this card is very good. It's a 2/2 for 2 that you can also grow. That's enough to make this card very good. Sort of like an Endless one. If you're playing black-red, this actually has the same stats as Endless one. Because you can pay 6, then it's a 6/6, 2 mana, 2/2, 3 mana, 3/3, and so on. And then the ability is gravy, because oftentimes when you activate the ability, you're going to miss. You're going to have less than 50% creatures in your deck for the most time. But anytime you hit, you get to put it on the battlefield if Grenzo is big enough. So Grenzo really rewards you for making it big. And the bigger Grenzo is, the more incentivized you are to use the last ability. I'm going to give Grenzo an 8. There is almost never a situation where he is bad. Okay, moving on to Death Reap Ritual. 2 black-green enchantment. Morbid. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, you may draw a card. I don't like this card too much. I think that for this card to be worth it, you need to draw 3 cards. Because remember, you're not going to draw the cards immediately, you're going to have to wait. So for 4 mana, I want to draw 3 cards. It's not worth it to only draw 2 cards, especially when you have to wait. So I'm going to give this card a 4. I don't like it too much, but it could be good if you're playing a black-green deck against another grindy deck. Then this card could maybe draw you 3 cards or more. If you draw 3 cards, it's probably a fine card. Spiritmonger is more like it. 3 black green, 6/6. Whenever it deals damage to a creature, puts a +1/+1 counter on it. So it has to survive for the ability to kick in. 1 black mana, you regenerate it. So it's, again, there are some cards that doesn't care about regenerate, but Expunge only kills non-black creatures, so it can't touch Spiritmonger anyway. And green becomes the color of your choice until end of turn. So your opponent can't even cast Exile on it, because you can just make it white. And this card is super efficient. All the thing it does, it's good. Only thing it doesn't have is reach, which is a little bit annoying. But it's a rock solid 9, and there is usually no board set that Spiritmonger just not can completely take over. Fires of Yavimaya. 1 red-green enchantment. Creature you control have haste. And you can sacrifice to give a creature +2/+2. So early in the game, you're going to keep this around for the most time, unless you're getting a very good deal to give something +2/+2. Maybe you can get rid of a good creature. But once the ability to give your creatures haste has sort of worn off, you can start using the second ability. I mean, you can only use it once, but generally, when I played Vintage Master last time, I never was too impressed with this card. It was very good in a standard deck, but the ability to give your creatures haste is not worth 3 mana, and a pump spell that your opponent can see is not worth 3 mana. The question is these two combined worth it? And I would say no. I'm going to give Fires of Yavimaya 4. I'm not actually too impressed by it. Shivan Worm. So this is, I think, the only gating creature in the entire set. Gating is when you bounce your own creature. This is 3 red-green for a 7/7 with trample. When it enters the battlefield, return a red or green creature you control to its owner's hand. This is a very powerful card. Sometimes you can bounce something that is beneficial for you. Maybe you bounce a Flame Tanker. That was the old idea with this standard deck that had this combo. Sometimes you can bounce a Blastoderm that is about to die. And sometimes you can bounce just a land or else. So I'm going to give Shivan Worm a 9. I think this card is super good. There are some games where it's going to be not great, like if your opponent has Manowar, it could be awkward. But even then, what if you bounce the Flame Tanker or a Beetleback Chief? You're not really that unhappy anyway. So this card is just super excellent and a big reason to be red-green. Basandra Battle Seraph. 3 red-white for a 4/4 flyer. Players can't cast spells during combat. So there's not going to be any exile or pump spells or things like that. And for 1 red mana, target creature attacks this turn if able. This has some abilities that actually are the second ability is better than the first. You're able to cast spells during combat. It's not even clear that that's a good thing for you, because it also stops you from casting abilities. You can't pump your own Basandra if they block it with multiple creatures. But forcing your opponent to attack can be very good with creatures. Either you're going to eat them or you're going to make them unable to block. It's also 4/4 flyer for 5, which is good too. I'm going to give Basandra a 7, but it's very close to an 8. One reason I'm not only going to give it a 7 is that it's a 5-drop, and red-white decks usually are kind of aggressive. Alright, Goblin Trenches. 1 red-white for an enchantment. 2 sacrifice a land with 2 1/1 red and white Goblin Soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. This is a very good card. It's sort of deceptive how good this card is, because when you look at, wow, sacrificing a land, that's very expensive. But this is a late game card. This is usually not a card that you play on turn 3 and then you immediately start using. This is a card you start using when your opponent has stabilized or you're flooding out. It also works very good with Rites of Initiations. Because later in the game, maybe you can stockpile some lands in your hand, and then you just start sacking all your lands. You only have to keep 1 red land around, and then you just kill your opponent in 1 fell swoop. And even if you don't have Rites of Initiations, you're gonna usually get to be able to go wide enough to kill your opponent anyway. So I'm giving Goblin Trenches an 8, and it's a very good card. Don't sleep on it. Armadillo Cloak. 1 green-white. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and trample, so it's an aura. And whenever enchanted creature does damage, you gain that much life. So this is any damage at all, but there are no fight spells. There were not printed any fight spells by the time before Modern.
Yeah, this is a good card, but I am a little hesitant to this card. There's a lot of answers to it, and unlike Elephant Guide, if your opponent casts Expunge on your creature, you will not get a free back. What you will get is a nice life swing, so that could be nice, but I mean it's good, but it is somewhat risky. I'm gonna give Armadillo Cloak a 6, but it's closer to a 5 than a 7. And there are a lot of cards that punish you for Armadillo Cloak. Okay, Selvala Explorer Return, 1 green-white for legendary creature. It's a 2/4, it has Parlay tap. Each player reveals the top card of his or her library. For each non-land card revealed this way, add green 2 mana and gain 1 life, then each player draws a card. So each player draws a card is a symmetrical effect. You can use this at the end of the opponent's turn, and then you get a little bit of an advantage in the sense that you are the one to first get to use the new card. And the ability is interesting because you don't know before you play it how many mana you're gonna get. On average, you're gonna probably get a 1 mana because the odds that you reveal a non-land is higher than 50%, but the odds that you will reveal 2 non-lands is 1.6 times 1.6 or 1.36. So you're somewhat unlikely to get 2 mana, you're also pretty unlikely to get 0 mana. So expect to get 1 green mana out of this, and you're also gonna gain 1 life on average. This card is a 6, it's a good card, solid card, but it's not gonna do anything super special. And green-white, its abilities doesn't really have any synergy with green-white really. I mean, it can help cast some expensive creatures, but yeah, it's sort of out of place in this format sadly, but it's still a good card. Eremitation, 3 green-blue. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Put X 1/1 green sapling creature tokens onto the battlefield where X is that creature's converted mana cost. This is one of the best cards that the green-blue Madness deck has against the bigger green decks. Because sometimes you're gonna have trouble with a big creature that's gonna block your Wild Mongrels and Arrogant Worms. And this card just solves the problem. And you get a bunch of 1/1s. So this card can be a massive blowout. Or it can be kind of awkward, but it's almost never that bad, because even if you bounce a 2-drop, you get a little bit of tempo and 2 1/1s which can trade with the 1/1, so it's never bad. I'm going to give Eremitation a 7, but its strength is going to heavily depend on the matchup. In some matchups it's going to be a 9, and in some matchups it's going to be more like a 5. Edric, Spymaster of Thresh, the last green-blue card, 1 green-blue for a 2/2. Whenever a creature is comes up to one of your opponents, is controlling may draw a card. So this includes Edric himself. And this card is interesting. In some games it's not going to do too much, and in other games it's going to draw you 3 or 4 cards. This is a card that can snowball, because if you get some hits and you're going to maybe draw your Manowars and start bouncing your opponent blockers, and it can get out of hand. I'm going to give Edric a 7, because another thing to consider is the fear that Edric puts into your opponent. Because if your opponent knows that if Edric gets out of hand, it's going to snowball, you're going to draw into Manowars, Eremitations. And so also if you can combine Edric with a card like Choking Tethers to get a little bit of hit and draw some cards. Maybe draw another Choking Tethers. Finish the game that way. Alright, Marchesa the Black Rose. She is 1 blue, black, red for a 3/3 with Dethrone. So if your opponent has more life than you, you get a +1/+1 counter. And this goes for all your creatures. So all your creatures will now have Dethrone. And whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, return that card to the battlefield and you control at the beginning of the next end step. So it is a Grixis card, and Grixis is a kind of a weird spot in this format. It's usually going to be some kind of control deck. But the mana's gonna be bad. You're gonna need some constant to play fetch lands or a dual land if you're lucky. And this card is hard to work. The ability is obviously nice because if you get 1 hit in with a creature, it's gonna be immortal. You're gonna get it back. And if you're playing a Grixis control deck, you can probably have less life than your opponent. That being said, Dethrone wants you to be aggressive. So I'm gonna give Marchesa a 6. She has a lot of powerful abilities, but it's hard to get this card to work, and it's a weird color combination. Ancient Tomb. This is a land, our first land. It taps to add 2 mana to our mana pool and it deals 2 damage to you. This is a card that's hard to evaluate because it only taps for colorless and it deals 2 damage to you every time it's tapped. I'm actually not in love with Ancient Tomb. I think it's hard to get that to work. You will get 1 mana ahead of your opponent, but it's only gonna give you colorless mana. And you're gonna take a beating from the damage. And if you play against an aggressive deck, this card is very bad. So I'm gonna give Ancient Tomb a 4, and I'm actually not even sure I'm gonna play it in most of my decks. This isn't Cube where you can tap to add some huge artifacts. This is still a somewhat irregular draft format. Ankh of Mishra, 2 mana artifact. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, Ankh of Mishra deals 2 damage to that land's controller. So this is obviously an aggressive card because it's a symmetrical effect and it only deals damage to players when they play land. It's one of the worst top decks imaginable because if you draw it later in the game, your opponent doesn't even need to play lands. I'm gonna give this card a 4. I could see playing it in a very aggressive deck against a control deck, but generally I would probably stay away from Ankh of Mishra. Actually, I'm gonna give it a 3. I think you should almost never play it. Bad River. So now there is a cycle with lands, and this is a fetch land that ends the battlefield tapped, but you don't have to pay life. So it's a land, ends the battlefield tapped, and you can tap and sacrifice search river for an island or swarm card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Now this is limited, so most of the time you're not going to have a dual land to get, but if you have a dual land, these lands go up in value, because Bad River can get you, for example, bad lands, it can get you a scrub land, similar. It also has some synergy with Brainstorm. If I am blue-black, I think the card is a 5. It is a card I will not pick over a good solid playable, but I will put it in my deck and I will take it over. I mean, I'm not going to hate draft, but it's a 5. I'm not going to take it super high. If I have a Brainstorm, the card goes up to a 6. And if it also helps me splash a dual land, I'm also going to give it a 6. So these are either 5s or 6 depending on your deck. Bad lands. Some similarities here with Bad River. If I am blue, black, red, I'm going to see Badlands as a 5. Still not insane. I mean, Badlands is actually not that much better than a Dragon Skull Summit in Limited, if you think about it. Only time Badlands is better than Dragon Skull Summit is if you if you're only splashing the color. If I'm splashing, Badland gets a 6 because it's gonna enter untapped all times. Compared to Dragon Skull Summit, which sometimes you're gonna draw it with your island in your Grixis deck, and it's gonna enter the battlefield tapped, whereas Badlands always enters the battlefield untapped. So if I am splashing, I'm giving it a 6. If I am playing those cards, I'm giving it a 5. Barren Moor. Now we have a cycle of cycling lands. Now it has to consider that the best cycling lands are the red and the white ones. Reason being is because of the cycling deck, Astral Slide and Lightning Rift. But they're all good. I give them a 6. They're not as good as they are in Hour of Devastation because there are less payoffs. Also, the Barren Moor is probably the worst one because the green and blue ones help with Threshold. So the black one is still the worst one, but they're not too different actually. But red, white best, green, blue also good because of Threshold. Barren Moor the last one. Bayou gets the same rating as Badlands. That is a 5 and 6 if you're splashing. Bazaar of Baghdad. It's a land that taps to draw 2 cards and it's got 3 card. So in most decks this is a 1. It's a horrible card. Every time you activate it, you're down a card. And you're also down a card because this is a land that doesn't tap for mana. Only time I play Bazaar of Baghdad is if I have an insane amount of Madness cards. Or I am a very extremely all-in Reanimator deck. Neither of those decks are super likely. So most of the time I'm not going to play Bazaar of Baghdad. Don't get fooled by this card. Black Lotus. Oh, what can I say? This is obviously a 10. You should play it in all decks. It is probably at its best in Storm. And it's probably the best card in the format for Storm. Even better than Sol Ring. I think Sol Ring is better than Black Lotus, except if you're playing Storm. Yeah, Black Lotus is a 10. There isn't much to say. if this isn't a phantom draft, you're also always gonna take it for value. Alright, Caldera Lake. Now we're gonna enter a cycle of truly horrible lands. But they're what we have, so. They enter the battlefield tapped, and you can tap to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. You can also tap them to add blue or red, and it deals 1 damage to you. So this is a pain land that enters the battlefield tapped. Now first of all, pain lands are not optimal and limited, because you don't want to take damage. You must rather have a card like Sulphur Falls or Spire Bluff Canal. But not only does this card enter the battlefield tapped, it also damages you. I will only play these if I am splashing. If I am playing the 2 colors, I will not play them. It's not worth it. You're paying too high of a price. Not only does the land come into play tapped, it also damages you. So the only time I'm playing these cards is if I really need to splash something insane. Maybe I am playing like a blue-black Dimir deck and really want to splash Prophetic Bolt. Then I could see play. Most of the time Caldera Lake gets a free. It's a very bad mana fix. Chimeric Idol, 3 mana artifact. 0. Tap all lands you control. Chimeric Idol becomes a 3/3 turtle artifact creature until the end of turn. This is a 7. A 3/3 for free is good in this format. It's much better than Harrier Naga was in Hour of Devastation, because this is back in the day where creatures were much worse. The downside is of course that you cannot play any cards during your opponent's turn, or you cannot play any combat tricks if you want to use this. So you have to play everything sorcery speed in your pre-combat main phase. So don't forget that. Don't just F6 to combat or whatever and then do it. So Chimeric Idol is good, but it goes down in value if I have a lot of instant and combat tricks. City in a Bottle, 2 mana artifact. Whenever a non-token permanent original printed in Arabian Nights expansion other than City on the Battle is on the battlefield, its controller sacrifices it. Players can't play cards originally reprinted in Arabian Nights expansion. I am sorry, I'm just not going to review this card. I don't know which cards are in Arabian Nights, and it's too much work to find out. Yeah, I can't even think of any. I think Bazaar of Baghdad is one of the few cards that are printed in Arabian Nights. So I'm not going to review it. I think it is a 1 though. Cursive Portal, 4 mana artifact, Will of the Council. At the beginning of your upkeep, starting with you, each player votes for Carnage or Homage. If Carnage gets more votes, sacrifice Cursive Portal and destroy all non-land permanents. If Homage gets more votes, or the vote is tied, draw a card. So you should always vote for Homage, because voting for Carnage only gives your opponent an option to blow up the board. Remember that this also blows up the Cursive Portal, so that's even worse. So this is a 4 mana artifact that draws an extra card every turn. That's very good. I'm gonna give this card an 8. The only reason I'm not giving it higher is that it is a fast format, and tapping 4 mana and not affecting the board could be bad. You may die before you get can use all the extra cards. But it is a very good card. I will play it in almost every deck, unless I am super aggressive. Even then, it's probably still fine to have a way to review. So Cursive Portal, don't get fooled by the wall of text. It basically is an artifact for 4 mana that draws you an extra card every turn. Curse Scroll, now this is a bomb if I ever saw one. 1 mana, artifact, 3 tap, name a card. Reveal a card at random from your hand. If it is a named card, Curse Scroll is 2 damage to target creature play. It looks like a weird card, but the way this works is that you want to activate this when you have very few cards in your hand. Or 1 preferably, and then it's 3 tap, deal 2 damage to target creature player, and it comes down for 1 mana. So don't start using this on turn 4. Use this later in the game when you've emptied out your hand. This is a very good card. I think it's a 9. Only reason I'm not giving it a 10, it's not great in a control deck or a deck with a lot of card draw, because you can't empty your hand to make this card work. But in an aggressive deck, this also goes to the face. So Curse Scroll, very good card, don't pass it. Also don't get fooled by the wall of text. This is a card that says 3 tap, deal 2 damage to target creature player if you have 1 card in your hand. If you have 2 cards in your hand, you have 50% shot. Floodplain gets the same rating as Bad River. Flowstone Sculptress, 6 mana artifact creature, 4/4. You can 2 tap, 2 discard, not tap, 2 discard a card, put a +1/+1 counter, or it gains flying, first strike, or trample. So you have to choose between a counter or flying, first strike, or trample. This is a nice card. I'm gonna give it a 7. It is expensive. It is very nice in the Madness deck because you can madness out things for free while still affecting the board. And if you attack with a Floatstone Sculptress, it's very hard for your opponent to block it. If they double block it, you can give it first strike and kill something and make it survive. If they shunt block it, you can maybe give it trample. And if they don't block it, you can give it a counter or just not use it. The threat of activation is strong here. And give Floatstone Sculptress 7. What holds it back is its high mana cost. Forgotten Cave. It ends the battlefield tapped and it's a cycling land. And it's a good card. I'm gonna give it a 6. But very close to a 7 since it is a red cycling land. And red is a color that not only has the slide and Lightning Rift deck, it also is a deck that doesn't want to flood out. Grand Coliseum ends the battlefield tapped. Add 1 mana to a mana pool, and you can add mana of any color to a mana pool. It is 1 damage to you. I'm going to give this the same rating as the Caldera Lake cycle, but it is better because you can tap for any color. So in the 3 color decks it is actually a 6, but I would not play it outside of that. Grasslands, it ends the battlefield tapped, and you can sacrifice it to search your forest or plains. We've already been through this card. It's a green-white fetch land. Ivory Tower, 1 white mana. And 1 mana, sorry. Artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep you gain X life. X is the number of cards in your hand minus 4. So if you have 7 cards you gain 3 life, 6 cards you gain 2, 5 cards you gain 1. I don't like this card. It is just a life gain card, and sometimes it won't even gain you life. If you cast it on turn 1 on the play, you're already down to 5 cards. So you're gonna gain 1 life. The next turn you're gonna play a land. If you don't have anything, you're gonna gain 1 life next turn. Now the wombo combo is with Yawgmoth's Bargain, but if I had Yawgmoth's Bargain, maybe I could see myself playing Ivory Tower, because that is a nice combo. Otherwise, I'm gonna give Ivory Tower a 3. You may play it if you feel you're weak to aggressive decks, because if you're on the draw, it is a little better. If you're on the draw, you're gonna play a land, use 7 cards, play Ivory Tower, you have 6, so then you're gonna gain 2 life per turn if you not play anything. And if you cycle cards, you may still have cards in your hand. So Ivory Tower, not good. I'm gonna give it a 3. Karn Silver Golem. This card has a lot of text. 5 mana for a 4/4 artifact creature, legendary. When it blocks, it becomes blocked. It gets -4/+4. So your opponents are always going to be able to block Karn and survive. So it's not a great offensive card, because your opponent gets blocked with a 1/1 and it becomes a 0/8. However, it's going to be able to block any ground creature and survive. Basically, it's going to become a 0/8. So you can even block a symbiotic worm and survive. So it's a pretty good defensive card. Has the last ability 1. Target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its converted mana cost until end of turn. But as you may have noticed, there isn't too many artifacts in this set. So I'm going to give Karn Silver Golem a 5. And it goes up to a 6 if you have a bunch of artifacts in your deck. But this is not a great card. If your opponent has just a single creature on the battlefield, you cannot attack with Karn. It does not attack as a 4/4. It attacks as a 0/8 if your opponent has a block. Alright, Keldon Necropolis, legendary land. Tap, add 1 to your mana pool, 4 and a red, sacrifice a creature. Keldon Necropolis is 2 damage to target creature play. It's a kind of a nice card in a red deck, because you get the ability sort of for free. You have to make your mana a little bit worse, but in a goblin deck, I actually think this card is a 7, because you can just close out the game. Let's say your opponent stabilizes, you have a bunch of goblins in play. You're going to be able to toss them on your opponent and deal 2 damage. Also, you can kill your opponent's evasive creatures by your blockers. Sometimes you can just send a team, your opponent makes some blocks, you sacrifice one of the blocked creatures that would have died anyway, target one of the other creatures that are blocking, and gain some value. I would not play Keldon Necropolis in a slower slide deck, but it is good in red aggressive decks. Sheldrawn Outposts, land. If it would enter the battlefield, sacrifice the plains instead. If you do, put it onto the battlefield. If you don't, put it into its owner's graveyard. This is just so you can tap it and make a soldier in response, or whatever, some old clause like that. So this is a card that costs you a land. Oops. But it creates 1/1. This is a much worse version of Adanto, the first fort, but it's on a land, so it doesn't cost you a card. This is a nice, interesting, grindy card. I'm going to give it a 7 in a white deck. It does cost you a land, but it is
uncounterable. So unlike Legion's Land, your opponent can't do anything. If they have a counter spell, doesn't matter. I mean, Legion's Land comes down on turn 1, so it's hard to have a counter spell anyway, but you know what I mean. It's completely uncounterable and it grinds out a long game. Now the Solid does not have lifelink, so that's a little unfortunate. I'm going to give Children Outpost a 7. Lake of the Dead, land. And it's the same clause as Children Outpost. If it would come into play, sacrifice a swamp. If you do put it into play, if you don't put it into graveyard. Just so you can't use the ability in response. When it taps to add a black, you can sacrifice a swamp at 4 black. But the problem is that you have to sacrifice a swamp when it comes into play. I'm going to give this card a 2. I think it's almost unplayable. Could be good in some weird black deck with Yorgot's Bargain and Lurking Evil and some weird deck. But you have to sacrifice the swamp when it comes to play. And you have to sacrifice the swamp every time you want to add 4 mana. You do get 3 mana, but you're down a swamp. I think this card is just too all-in for my taste. Library of Alexandria. Wow, this card. It's a land that taps that 1 to your mana pool, and you can tap to draw a card. This card is a Stone Cold Bomb. I'm going to give it a 9. I'm not going to give it a 10 because if you draw it later in the game, it's just a land that doesn't do anything. It just taps for a mana. And it's just a land. It doesn't win you the game, but it's still... The reason why Library of Alexandria is so insane is if you have it in your opening hand, you can play it on turn 1 on the play. And then the next turn, you draw up to 7 cards. Before you play a land, you just draw a card. Then you play a land and have 7 cards. And then next turn you do the same. And you're just going to draw so many cards. And this doesn't even cost you a card. It's just tap to draw a card and it's a land. The worst case scenario is if you draw Library of Alexandria later in the game. It's just a land that taps for 1. It's not a disaster. It's even better on the draw because you can just immediately use it turn 1. So you can draw. You start with 8 cards and you tap to draw a card immediately after you play. I mean, you wait your opponent's turn so you don't have to discard. But yeah, Library of Alexandria gets a 9. Insane card. You should never pass it. It's good in all decks, aggressive and control decks. Also imagine playing it in a Madness deck where you have to discard your hands as you can discard Basking Root. Alright, Lionside Diamond. Now this is a card that suffers a lot from being in a more restrained, tempered environment than in a broken environment. So 0 mana artifact, you have to sacrifice it and discard your hand to add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. So it could theoretically work with Madness, although here I have to say that I'm not sure how the rules work. If you can cast Madness cards off of the mana of Lionside Diamond, I don't know if they changed this. It also is good in Storm, because in Storm you can maybe like put something like a Brainstorm on the stack and then sacrifice Lionside Diamond to get 3 mana, and then you can use the 3 mana to maybe cast a Tendrils off the cards to draw off Brainstorm and the mana. So it could also not be good in the Storm deck because maybe you don't have a Brainstorm or maybe you don't really have a way to abuse Lionside Diamond. You can't cast any cards in your hand off Lionside Diamond. So it's good in Storm. I think it's a 7 in Storm, although it's not insane because sometimes you can't even use it even in Storm. And in any regular deck it's unplayable, it's a 1. And in Madness I'm not even in love with it because sometimes it doesn't even do anything. If you draw your Madness cards early, you want to play them, and then you can't really use Lionside Diamond because you have to discard everything else. So I would generally try to stay away from Lionside Diamond. Lonely Sandbar. It has a battlefield taps for blue and a cycling blue. And it's another of these nice cycling lands. We already reviewed them. Mana Crypt. Now this card is different from Ancient Tomb because it doesn't cost you a land drop and it accelerates you with an additional color because Ancient Tomb takes up your land slot. So this is a card I'm much more excited about. I think I'm going to give Mana Crypt an 8, and the reason it doesn't get higher is that it has a pretty hefty upkeep cost. It's going to on average deal you 1.5 damage. Now if you can use the mana to get so far ahead that the damage doesn't matter, the drawback doesn't do anything, but there is no Tinker, so it's not that easy to get rid of the Mana Crypt. There are no repeals either. There's not actually that many ways to bounce Mana Crypt or get rid of it. There is Rescind, I guess, but yeah. I guess you can also use Karn to kill it because it becomes a 0/0. But yeah, Mana Crypt is a very swingy card. Sometimes it's just gonna get you very far ahead. If you draw it later in the game, well, it's bad, but then most artifact stuff is bad. Just a reminder, though, that do not just automatically play Mana Crypt on turn 1. If you're not using the mana, you're gonna only deal yourself on average 1.5 damage by playing it turn 1. So if you don't use it turn 1, don't play it, so you don't take unnecessary damage. Alright, Mana Prison, one of the few mana rocks in this set. 3 mana, it taps to add 1 mana. But 1 tap, you can add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So this is strictly worse than what's it called, artifact that costs Manalith. Yeah, so this is strictly worse than Manalith. And this is also a format where you don't usually splash too much because the 2 color combinations are often very defined. One of the decks I like to splash is blue-black. I like to splash my Prophetic Bolts, and that deck also kind of wants a little bit of acceleration. So I don't like Mana Priest too much. I'm going to give it a 4. I'm going to mostly stay away from it. Manowar. This is a card that is somewhat similar to Mana Crypt, but it is worse. It's 1 mana, and it adds 3 mana to your mana pool. So if you play turn 1, you can have 5 mana on turn 2. At the beginning of the graph, you can pay 4 mana to untap it, and it doesn't untap during the untap step. So it is a one-shot, but you can unfreeze it later. And at the beginning of the draw step, if it is tapped, it is 1 damage to you. So you can untap it in your upkeep to avoid taking a damage. This is also a very swingy card. I'm going to give it the same rating as Mana Crypt, although I think it's a little worse. But it is a little less risky because it's going to deal you less damage and you have more control of it. So I'm going to give it an 8. And it's a very powerful card. Masticore, 4 mana for a 4/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice unless you discard a card, which could also work very good with Madness. And it also fuels Threshold. So 2 mana, this 1 damage target creature, and 2 mana regenerate Masticore. Very useful abilities. You can pick off small creatures, or you can regenerate it. It attacks every turn. It's at its best in blue-green Madness, because not only does it trigger Madness and Threshold, it also gives that deck removal, which it doesn't always have. I'm going to give Masticore a 9. It is very insane. Especially if you can reach 6 mana, you can just completely take over a game. And discarding a card feels very well worth it. Memory Art. This is 5 mana for an artifact. You can tap and sacrifice it. Each player exiles all cards from his or her hand and draws 7 cards. At the beginning of the next end step, each player discards his or her hand and returns his or her hand each card he or she exiled this way. So this card is at its best in Storm. What does this card do? Well, you should not sacrifice the same turn it comes into play for obvious reasons. You want to wait the turn. Then you're going to draw, I would say, usually 3 or 4 cards. You can often play a land of the 7 cards, and you can often play 2 spells. The longer you wait, the more powerful it is. So how do we like a 5-mana artifact that draws me 3 or 4 cards that is somewhat unreliable? I think it's around a 7. It's at its best in Storm because you can just cast it and cast a bunch of rituals in your main phase and crack Memory Jar and cast all the cards, hopefully with the Storms. But in Storm, Memory Jar is an 8 or a 9. In a regular deck, it's like a 7. It could even be a 6. If you're playing an aggressive deck, it's not that great. Alright, Mistress Workshop. It is a land that taps 3 to your mana pool. We can only spend it to cost artifact. I'm going to give this card a 3. I think it's going to be unplayable in most decks. There isn't even that many good artifacts to cast with Masticore, Memory Jar. Most of them are rare or uncommon. And if you cast a bunch of mana rocks with Mistress Workshop, that's not really that good. So I wouldn't play Mistress Workshop in most decks. Mountain Well have already been over. And now we have the power, the Moxes. We have 5 Moxes here. You give the Moxes a 9. They are very good at jump you ahead of a turn. But I could see actually taking some cards over them, as insane as that would sound.
I'm playing a non-phantom draft, and there is a
control magic and a mox. I could see taking control magic over the mox, because sometimes the moxes are just like a land. If you draw them later in the game, they're just a land, which is fine. I'm not saying they're bad, but they are insanely good in the early turns. But also, if they're off color, they can be somewhat awkward. So the moxes are great. You should take them high, but they're not on the level of Black Lotus and Sol Ring, which we'll get into later. Nevinyrra's Disc, 4 mana. It comes to the battlefield tap. You can pay 1, tap, sacrifice it to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So all permanents except lands and planeswalkers. Planeswalker wasn't printed when Nevinyrra's Disc first got out. It's a slow sweeper, but it's still a sweeper. It's very slow, though. I'm going to give Nevinyrra's Disc a 6. It's a solid card, but the delay means that your opponent can plan for it. So no one in their right mind is going to dump a bunch of creatures on the battlefield after you cast a Disc. You're going to get all the cards that are on the play that turn, and your opponent's going to get an additional attack phase. Now, the good thing with Nevinyrra's Disc, unlike Winds of Wrath or another Wrath, is that you can sacrifice it at the end of your opponent's turn. So you're going to be the first one to play cards after the Disc. However, I think this format is a little too fast for Nevinyrra's Disc, but it is still a good card. Null Rod, 2 mana, artifacts. Activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. This card doesn't do anything. It's a 2. It says if your opponent has some insanely good artifact like Masticore or maybe Memory, or maybe you can bring it in, but it's not even that good anyway. Because Masticore is still a 4/4/4 that maybe your opponent can feed some lands to. So Null Rod, not great. Pine Barrens, this is another one of those very bad dual lands. Mostly I want to stay away from them unless I'm splashing. Plateau, another dual land, gets a 5. Predator Flagship, 5 mana legendary artifact. 2, target creature gets flying until end of turn, and 5 tap, destroy target creature with flying. So you can spend 7 mana to destroy a creature. That's powerful, but very slow. You can also spend 5 mana if your opponent has a flyer and play and kill it outright. You can also make your creatures fly over or block flyers. So I'm going to give Predator Flagship a 4. I think it's too slow for this format, and I would mostly generally stay away from it. But it is a very bomby card if you're playing in against a deck that's not super slow. So not great, too slow for this format, I think. Ring of Geeks, 3 mana, and you can play 1 tap target artifact, creature, or land. It also has Echo free. This card is much worse than Icy Manipulator, but it's still playable. I think the card is a 6. It is very powerful to lock down the biggest creature on the board, but you're paying a big price for it. Only paying an Echo once, though, and it is hard to get rid of. And you can actually tap lands too, so you can take your opponent off their splash color in some instances, but mostly you're just going to lock down the biggest creature on the board, no questions asked. Doesn't matter if they have an aura. If you deal with that creature, you still have a ring to deal with something else. So it is a solid card, but it is expensive. You're paying a price for it. Alright, so the top row here we have Rocky Tar Pit. Red-black fetch land. Good if you're red-black, otherwise not great. Salt Flats, another bad dual land. Been over those. Savannah, good, but not that much better than a Sunpetal Grove, honestly. This is not constructed. Scabland, one of these horrible dual lands that was printed in Tempest originally. Not great. Scrubland, again, we've been over the duels. Security Step, one of the better cycling lands because of the white deck is the cycling deck. This gets a 6, but pretty close to a 7. Now Skullclamp, now here is a bomb, and this is really a great format for Skullclamp because, as you may have seen, there's a bunch of token makers in this format. Skullclamp gets a 9. It's 1 mana for an artifact equipment. Crit creature gets +1/-1. That's weird, but when a crit creature dies, you draw 2 cards. So this is excellent with build-back Chiefs. It's insane in Goblins, insane in white decks. If you're a slow, grindy deck, it's not that great, but it's probably still fine, because if you put this on your creature, your opponent's going to be very hard pressed to block it or attack into it because you're just going to draw 2 cards. Let's say you put this on a 3/3. It's a 4/2. And now every time your opponent engages in combat, you're going to draw 2 cards. It's going to get out of hand very quickly. And yeah, even more insane in small creature decks. So slam it, never pass it. Unless you're playing Storm, which you probably shouldn't anyway. Skyshroud Forest. I think this is the last of the cycle of bad duels from Tempest. They are uncommon now, at least. They used to be rare. They're pretty cool looking art though. Smokestack. Now here's a card I don't like at all. It's a 4-mana artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a suit counter on Smokestack. At the beginning of each play's upkeep, that plays sacrifice a permanent for each suit counter on Smokestack. This is just a definition of a very slow card. Now you want to stack these so you sacrifice last. So you want to put the sacrifice trigger on the stack last, so it resolves first. So you want to put the counter on first, so it resolves first. So last, I mean. But I'm going to give Smokestack a 3. I think it's unplayable. Sol Ring gets a 10 out of a 10. It's a 1-mana artifact that taps for 2 mana. It's insane in every possible deck. It jumps you ahead 2 turns. And the only thing that's bad about it is it can be a bad top deck. So if you're drawing it later in the game, Ancestral Recall is better. But yeah, Sol Ring, 10 out of 10. Probably the best card in the cube. In the Vintage Masters drafts, I should say. Sphere of Resistance, 2-mana artifact. Spells cost 1 more to cast. I'm going to give this a 2. I think it's mostly unplayable. I could see sideboard again if your opponent is playing Storm. That's the only time it's good. Because this is a symmetrical effect that costs you a card. And that's not where you want to be in Magic. Strip Mine Land. Taps to add 1 mana. You can sacrifice to destroy target land. This card gets an 8 because while it is a very powerful card, it doesn't do anything. I mean, it's not a card advantage, and it doesn't put you ahead. It can just randomly just screw your opponent. This is a card that has a very random component to it, because sometimes it's going to win you the game, sometimes it's not going to do anything. It's just going to tap for a colorless. So it's very hard to know how you want to pick Strip Mine. If I see a pack Strip Mine and Battle Screech, I'm probably taking Battle Screech, honestly. Suchi, 4-mana artifact creature for 4/4. When it dies, add 4 to your mana pool. Now I want to give some historical context here. When this card first was printed, mana burn was a thing. So there's a reason why we have a 4/4 with an upside. That being said, the upside is not that huge because it's hard to use 4 mana in combat. Most of the time a Suchi dies, it's either going to be on your opponent's turn when they cast a removal spell or in combat. If you can use the ability, it's very nice, but most of the time this is just a 4/4 for 4. Which is a solid 6, close to a 7. Taiga, another duel. Fading Glaciers. Now this is another card that's very slow. So it's a land that comes into play tapped. Doesn't tap for mana. You can pay 1 and tap it. Search Library for basic land card, put it into the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. And then you have to return Fading Glaciers to its owner's hand. So this is a land that actually costs you 2 land drops if you want to use it, because it comes into play tapped. Doesn't do anything, and then you can pay 1 and tap it, so you have to spend an additional mana. The good thing is that this is card advantage. This slowly gets almost all the lands out of your deck. I'm going to give Fading Glaciers a 5, and I'm not going to play it against aggressive decks. You just don't have time for that. There's also not too many combos. I mean, you can combo it with Brainstorm, but as I've said, with many other cards, Fading Glaciers is only good in a control on control matchups. So it's a very slow card advantage machine that only gives you lands as card advantage. So keep that in mind. Thopter Squadron, 5 mana for a flyer that comes in play with 3 counters on it. So it's a 3/3 flyer for 5. You pay 1 and remove a counter from Thopter Squadron, create a 1/1 colorless top artifact creature. You can only do this as sorcerer, so you can't respond to your opponent's removal spell. You also pay 1, sacrifice another top to put a counter on this. You can only do this as a sorcerer. So you can't do any shenanigans where you create a Thopter, shump block, and put the counter back. So how do you abuse this card? Well, you need to have something like Recurring Nightmare. It's a very sick combo, Recurring Nightmare. Otherwise, it's hard to use this card. You can't respond to a removal spell. You can slowly do some neat things with Manowar, like remove 2 counters, make 2 1/1s, and you cast Manowar, bounce this, replay it. But that's very slow. So it's a 3/3 flyer for 5, most of it that you can, if you have some time, spread out, which is a minor upside. So I'm going to give this card a 5. It's not great, it's not bad. It's a very medium card. Time Vault, 2 mana artifact. It means battlefield tap, it doesn't untap. If you begin your turn while Time Vault is tapped, you may skip that turn instead. If you do untap Time Vault, you can tap it, take an extra turn after this one. So I think this card is unplayable. There are no real combos with this card. There's no Voltaic Key, there's no Ral Sarek, there's no Tesseract. The only thing you can use Time Vault with is to store turns. So let's say you're in a draw go, both players basically doesn't do anything. You can just skip your turn and start storing counters on Time Vault. And you can take a bunch of turns in a row. But that seems super situational. Your opponent needs to be bricking, and you need to do something very productive with a couple of turns in a row. I guess it prevents you from decking, so that's a thing. But yeah, Time Vault I'm gonna give it a 1. I think it's unplayable. You may correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure about that. Tolarian Academy, Legendary Land, tap, add blue to your mana pool for each artifact you control. This is another card that's not good, because there isn't enough artifacts in this set. You can't reliably get Moxes, and you can't reliably get Signets. There are no Signets either. So I'm going to give Tolarian Academy a 2. I could see maybe once in a blue moon we have just draft all artifacts you can, Mistress Workshop. Yeah, it's probably not going to happen, but I don't want to give it a 1. I'm going to give it a 2. And we have the green Cycling Land. We've been over the Cycling Lands. Triangle of War, 1 mana artifact. 2, sacrifice it. Target creature you control fights target creature an opponent control. So it's a 3 mana Prey Upon that you can play in any color. That is not great. I'm going to give this card a 3. I think it's going to be unplayable most of the time. Prey Upon is actually not even that good of a card either. I think Prey Upon is a 5 in most sets because it doesn't give any bonuses. And the reason why Prey Upon is good is as a green removal. Most colors have removal. I could see Sided Triangle of War in if you see some incredible utility creature that you want to kill. Maybe you see like a Tradewind Rider or something like that. But yeah, I don't like this card. Stay away from it. Then we have Tropical Island, Tundra, Underground Sea, Volcanic Island. These, again, I said, are 5s, 6 if you're splashing. Not that much better than Duel Ends we see nowadays in Limited. I mean, in Constructed, obviously, they're very good. And our last card is Yavimaya Hollow. It's a legendary land that you can tap to add 1. You can pay green and tap to regenerate target creature. That's incredibly powerful, especially when it comes on an uncounterable land. So if I'm playing green, this is a 7. Because sometimes you're not even going to use the ability. If you play against an aggressive deck, you can't use the ability too much. And it's close to an 8, but I would say it's a 7 in a green deck. But you can completely make your opponent's life a nightmare. They have some kind of removal spell that doesn't prevent regeneration, like Aftershock. They can't even use it as long as you have green mana up. So it's very annoying for opponent, but it's also sometimes they can play around it. So. Alright, so that was my Vintage Master review. I hope you enjoyed it. As far as colors go, I'll say white is the strongest color. It has a good aggressive component, best common in Battle Screech, and a bunch of archetypes you can go controlling with a slide or aggressive decks. I think black is the worst color. Its Reanimator theme is not really supported enough. It doesn't have enough fatties to put into play. And its creatures are spread with some aggressive cards and some more controlling cards like Dark Hatchling. And as far as that, I think green is also not a great color. I think the best colors are white, red, and blue in that order. White's best, red is second, blue is third. I think this format is pretty aggressive. One of the reasons there really aren't any good sweepers. There is Famine, but that also damages players and costs 5 mana. a bunch of token producers, and it's hard for a control deck to keep up. I think the best control deck in the format is a slide deck. That's more of a combo control deck. You can also play blue-red control with a bunch of burn spells, Scrivener's Prophetic Bolts, but it is tough to do that. So, thank you for watching, and please give me feedback in the comments if there is something you thought I missed, or if there is a way I can make the grading system better.